Hey everyone, Nick from Print Profit. You're going to love this episode. We had a chance to catch up with Cassie Green, who's the content director at Apparelist. What Apparelist does for the printing industry is empower apparel decorators of all different shapes and sizes in navigating the challenges of growing their business. They offer thought leadership, community, educational resources, events, and much more. I wanted to learn more about Cassie and her background in the printing industry. How exactly did she find herself at this position? I was also curious to pick her brain on content and community in today's day and age, and how do you navigate all of the options that are out there in order to meet the audience where they are in a unique way and ultimately add value. And lastly, learn more about Apparelist. They haven't been around for all that long. In a short amount of time, they've really been successful in establishing themselves as a go-to resource for apparel printers. What was behind that success, and where are they looking to go strategically in the future in order to create a phenomenal impact in our community? Thank you for your time listening to this episode. I know you'll enjoy it. Well, this is the second podcast episode of the Print Profit Podcast. Look out, world.
Hey, congratulations to you.
Yeah, thanks. I was thinking about how we originally got to know each other, and an email from Bruce from Print Tavo, the
Mhm.
one, the only, came to mind. And when he found out I was crazy enough to quit my job, as I was talking to him, he was firing off emails of everyone I needed to get connected to. So that was kind of cool to go back to where our paths originally crossed.
I'm so happy he connected us because I love what you have to share with the industry. So honestly, and Bruce is such an amazing person. He's done so much for this industry. So knowing that he holds you in high regard says a lot about you. So
I appreciate that.
yeah.
So I was looking up a lot about your background, and there's so much I'm curious to, like, there's so many cool places we can go. Um, why I thought it'd be so fun to have this conversation. We always have a good time connecting, sharing inspiration, ideas. It's been really fun for me in my journey, which started in screen printing in high school, to come back after 10, 15 years and be able to interact with that community again. And it's so different. I mean, there's similarities and differences from offset digital printing, but the creativity, the community, I mean, it is just so unique. And the fact that you get to live in that, help build that community, foster the education, inspiration, I'm really envious. I mean, it's an important role that you play in helping move the industry forward. It's just so cool.
It's really nice of you to say. Yeah, I mean, you know this because you've been one of our important partners since we got connected, but yeah, really, what a cool industry to be a part of. I mean, seriously, the people here are super creative. They're really brilliant, right? Um, and truly, I just like to be the conduit. If I can help even one person find that one answer or one person or whatever it is they need, awesome. Then my job is done, right? Like that's how I look at it. So, and thanks to people like you, I have a lot of help doing that.
Yeah. And it's an important role that you play. And for those who may not be familiar with the Paralist, can you share some background on, I mean, even myself jumping back in less than a year ago, um, like it's been so cool to get connected, follow the content, help contribute. What can you share on sort of the background of Paralist and where it's been and where it's at today?
Yeah, so we're youngins, right? All things considered. However, those of us working with Apparelist and non-Apparelist are not youngins to the industry. So let's backpedal. Um, long, long ago, Printing United Alliance, previously SGIA, did engage with the apparel community, sort of went a different direction, then realized like we need to re-engage with the apparel industry or the apparel community, right? It's a huge piece of the printing industry. It's wildly important. What we do matters on so many levels. And so they started building the brand, right? And then they brought myself on, they brought Josh Caruth on, a couple other people to really get Apparelist launched. That is Printing United Alliance's media brand to engage with the community. Like you said, we're really here to be a conduit and a connector to find the answers to connect you with the information you need, the people you need to know, all that good stuff, provide an educational platform. Um, Officially launched in January 2022, which
Wow.
seems like ages ago and also not ages ago because it's been a whirlwind. But I joined the Alliance at the end of 2021 to help get it going. Um, and truly, we try and engage with the apparel community sort of in a different level. Like we meet apparel decorators at the technical level. So we do have a lot of technical support. Like, one of the articles that comes to mind is we have a tutorial about edge to edge DTG printing, right? So we meet decorators at a technical level, but where we really realized decorators are lacking in information and educational resources was sort of on that business side. So like a lot of times they struggle setting the right prices, or they might struggle like just with basic accounting and financial stuff. Or we just had a webinar with Gary Jones, who's our Vice President of Environmental Health and Safety Affairs, and it was about OSHA and safety regulations. And Gary and I had an overwhelming number of emails come to us after that webinar saying, holy cow, I didn't know this, I didn't know this, I didn't do this. How do I fix it? What regulations do we need to follow? So like these are all the things that like when you run a business, you have to consider every aspect. So we try and be a support system in that aspect.
I didn't realize how young it is to your point. Did you, when you got involved, I mean, were you directly in the strategy and the go-to and how are we, I mean,
Yeah.
that aspect as well?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yes and no. So when I was brought on board, they already had a lot of things sort of discovered and figured out. As you know, trying to launch something new is a lot of legwork, right? You can't just jump in with, I mean, you can just jump in with no knowledge, but you probably shouldn't. And so there was a lot of legwork that the NAPCO media team and the Printing United Alliance team had already done. They had done a lot of like surveying of decorators, directly talking to decorators. They had done a lot of research into the market. Um, a magazine that was previously under our umbrella, Print and Promo Marketing, they spoke to a lot of those readers in that market to see, what is it that the apparel community needs at this level to really develop an audience and a content strategy and things like that. And then I came in about halfway through that and helped sort of bring it across the finish line, just in terms of like previous knowledge and work in the industry that I had. So, conglomeration, collaboration, however you want to put it, of lots of parties.
That makes sense.
Mhm.
What I'm, you know, envious about your role is how you can see and interact with so many different companies in the industry. And it all depends what part of the industry you work in. If you're another shop, there's either a competition element or, friendly aspect. If you're a vendor, supplier, obviously that relationship is different. But from where you play, being able to see so many different shops and talk and understanding the challenges and opportunities, like what would be a 30,000 foot overview for decorated apparel and kind of what you're seeing in 2024 through all these events and everything that you're involved in?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, I'm super blessed in that I get to be in a lot of shops and I get to go to a lot of events. And because otherwise, how am I going to, first of all, fulfill my role in an educated, purposeful way if I'm not out there like interacting with decorators, right? Because I'm not going to understand what they're going through unless I'm having those direct conversations and actually visiting their shops, right? So, like, what a cool thing to actually get in the shops and do stuff. I've gotten to, do the whole manual screen press thing. I've got to do, run a heat press and do some DTF transfers and stuff. And what I've really discovered, I guess, even since the launch of Apparelist, is there is a huge thirst for business education and how do I better run my business? Because I think if, you know, I hate to go back to the COVID thing, but I'm going to go back to the COVID thing. A lot of shops closed their doors during COVID, right? And that was horrible. And it wreaked havoc on a lot of industries. The ones that survived because they had really good business plans in place, more than likely, right? And that's just like a blanket statement. Um, and so I think a lot of them realize, wow, if I'm going to survive some catastrophic event, if I'm going to be able to grow sustainably, if I'm going to be able to hand this business down someday to my son or sell it to whoever, I better have it together. You know what I'm saying? So I think we're noticing like a huge hunger. It's not just a dirty, dingy garage shop, as some may picture. We're seeing these legitimate businesses who are ramping up production in a lot of ways, right? There's screen printing next to embroidery, next to heat presses, next to digital machines, we're even seeing a lot of shops with like wide format capabilities now. And, packaging and doing fulfillment and e-commerce and all of these things, diversifying their portfolios because they're realizing that you have to offer a variety of options and you have to do it well, right? So we're seeing a very huge emphasis on that. And then the other trend that I'm really noticing, in terms of like running their business better, is just that level of, what do I want to say, like consciousness of what's happening in your shop and making sure the right people are in place, paying attention to who's doing what in the shop, not just some owner running around like a chicken with his head cut off kind of thing. So we're really seeing just massive growth despite all of the doom and gloom of, the economy, blah, blah, blah. Okay, yeah, there's a little bit of that. Overall, people are pretty positive these days.
Yeah. No, I get that same sense as well. Um, and just thinking about, like I said, coming from where a background that's labels and packaging or direct mail, we're talking about apparel, and that's just such a different animal of a medium. And I don't know, the population of the world is only increasing. Um, People aren't running around naked around the world. We need to be clothed, and there's an expression behind what we wear. And like you said, with just all of the different um, things that are going on with labor and different technologies, it's just a cool crossing of challenges yet opportunities.
I'm curious about your perspective about that because you have such a background in that side of the industry versus like apparel. Do you see big differences? I mean, or not really, or what are you seeing similarity wise, anything like that?
Yeah, when I was at Drupa, I had the chance to interview the CEO of Kornit, and this was Kornit's first ever Drupa. And I asked him, you know, what is his message to a commercial digital or offset company who is looking to invest in bringing apparel? And he just mentioned a lot of the same trends are similar to what they're facing today. So um, brands aren't looking to commit to huge volumes that are going to sit, right? So it's those run lengths, those volumes are shrinking. It's more print on demand environment. People want it tomorrow, not 3 weeks from now. And then how do you manufacture that efficiently? So there's software involved. So that was interesting just to sit down with a business leader like that and hear that perspective. Um, and for my own observations, that medium has its um, differences, obviously, piece of paper versus apparel. But I think at the end of the day, we're custom manufacturers, and a lot of those same challenges are across the board. Labor's difficult. How do I produce more efficiently? Um, yeah, rising costs. But
There you go. Interesting.
I'd love to dive more in your background. So, did you grow up in Colorado? Has that been home?
Yeah, I am the rare Colorado native, as we like to refer to ourselves. Yes, I grew up in northern Colorado, born and raised, went to school in the mountains of Colorado, and then after college moved to the Denver area. Maybe someday somewhere different, but I don't know, something about like the mountains just have my heart. So I'll
I
always
think
been here.
if it's going to be different for you, it'll just be a different part of Colorado. That's
Maybe.
um, when I looked up your background, I saw you went to school for journalism and English. How did you set on that path going to school, right? It's difficult for people to know what do they want to do. Were you fortunate that you had a vision, or was it sort of just picking a major and seeing where it went?
Yeah, I did know I wanted to be a journalist my freshman year of high school. I loved to write as a child. I was the kid who always had like five different journals going and poetry and creative writing, and I loved it. And then in high school, we were doing like a little career thing as freshmen in high school because, freshmen in high school totally know what they want. Um, and I remember one of my teachers saying, "Hey, look, like creative writing's great, but realistically, do you think you're going to make a living on that?" And like some people make like a very good living with Stephen King, right? He's done just fine for himself. That was not my path. And so I was like, well, what else could I do with writing skills? And I started researching journalism and things like that. And I was like, that seems right up my alley. Like I get to talk to people, great, awesome. Um, Went to school for journalism, English, and I still studied creative writing. Like I have a creative writing emphasis on my degree. Um, and I thought to myself, I'm gonna work for like the Wall Street Journal or Time Magazine, and I'm gonna be that badass chick who just gets in there and gets it done, and then very quickly realized that also maybe that's not for me because the pace is insane, the stress level is insane. I graduated college like on the cusp of when print was really starting to swing to digital and no one really knew what that looked like. So there was a lot of out of work journalists, like traditionally. So I was going up against these guys who had like 30 years in journalism. And here's little me trying to get a job just at the local newspaper, right? Um, and then luckily stumbled into the B2B world, and that was my niche. So always knew I wanted to do journalism. It just took me a hot minute to figure out how.
I want to ask the phase of your career that was staff writer. When I looked up that path, I saw, if I'm pronouncing it right, the Gunnison Country Times.
Yeah.
Do you have a funny story that stands out as being a staff writer, and you have to cover this or make this sound interesting for a small part of Colorado?
Definitely a small part of Colorado. Okay, so there are three big. My very, very first byline article I ever had was on the what was it? The Gunnison Rodeo, like queen, but she was the queen, like she was an older lady. She was like in her 80s, right? And I can't even remember the details. And I got to interview her, and it was hilarious because anybody who's 80 years old living in Gunnison has some stories to tell, and they're usually quite funny and maybe a little bit off color. Um, so that was fun. But the one story that really I guess I could call it like my breakthrough story, it was about sourcing local beef. Because Gunnison is like a huge ranching part of the ranching community, right? And a lot of those small mountain towns are. And so there was big debate as, the swing of like, do we import beef? Do we buy local? How does that look? What kind of ranchers are even still, sustainably ranching in this local Colorado area. So that I would say was really kind of my breakthrough story as a journalist because it really taught me a lot about researching a topic that can get kind of heated, and people feel very strongly about one way or the other. And so not necessarily a fun story, but like I would say that was like a defining moment in my journalism.
When was your first time seeing your name in print? Would that have been high school or like college newspaper?
I mean,
Because
I did write for the high school newspaper, but nothing like, and I wrote for the college newspaper and I was the editor my senior year, but very first like public facing B2C bylined article would have been like summer of 2010. Dating myself. It's fine.
that's I remember myself and like that's a special moment having that, seeing that, and
Well, you have a leg up. You got to write for our sister publication, Printing Impressions, when you were in high school. That's amazing.
yeah, that was I remember calling Mark Michelson at the library and he took the call and I just said would love to write and share some opinions and that was a really neat opportunity and kudos for him for seeing the vision to let a young person's voice at that time shine through.
Well, that's respect to you because that's not easy to do. It's just like cold call an editor out of nowhere.
I don't know if I've ever told you this story before, but one of the coolest projects I worked on at my time in college at RIT, Rochester, New York, we were the only weekly 32-page college magazine in the United States. So 32 pages, all color, distributed every Friday for the whole school year. We had multi-million dollar web offset press, like the whole print facility. That's how we could pull it off. But just to have the photographers and the writers and the illustrators, I mean, I look back, it's like that was nuts doing that for 4 years.
Especially for college kids to pull off. I mean, jeez.
There's stuff happening on campus, but not that much.
No, you have not told me that story. That's amazing. I guess knowing you, I think that's pretty awesome. Like knowing you were part of that is also not surprising because you're a pretty motivated individual and you have a lot of really good information to share. So that's cool. I didn't know that.
That was the holy grail. So I'd go into the office at 4 or 5 in the morning once the final file was done, and then get it ready to print. Um,
Yeah, we pulled a few late nighters at the college newspaper. There would be times where I didn't leave the office before we went to print, like 3, 4 in the morning because something went wrong inevitably, right? So, oh,
um, One thing I want to ask, in what's similar in our backgrounds, is running. And for those who don't run, I think you can relate to this, maybe whatever your hobbies are. But for me, like long distance running has taught a lot about investing in hard work, and you're not going to see that return tomorrow, but long term, and just a lot of different lessons I could say that can even apply to where we're at now in our careers. Do you still run, or if not, you look back at that time and you kind of see certain things in life that added?
yeah, I definitely still run. I'm coming back from an injury right now, which is, as you know, as a runner, is it just happens and it is what it is, right? Definitely still run. Like you, I enjoy the long distance. So like 10K to half marathon is my sweet spot. Like that's where I find I accelerate. Um, I've always, so I started running at a fairly young age, because I'm a pretty high strung type A kind of person, and running was my way of outletting that stress. And then it turned into, competing track and field in high school, and then it turned into a college scholarship to run, and then it turned into marathons, and then it just turned into back into something that I outlet my stress with. And so, I mean, the biggest like analogy that I always draw, and you said it so perfectly, it's not gonna happen overnight.
Yeah.
So like right now, my husband's never been a runner, but now he's running. He's just all of a sudden decided he must run. I love that. I'm so proud of him. And he's just like, I don't understand why it's taking me so long to hit this distance or hit this time or lose weight or whatever. And I'm like, because this is like this is a laborious process. You will not see results overnight. Like you are building something that, trust me, is worth it in the long run, but some days it's not going to be fun. You are going to go for a run and it is going to be the worst run of your life. And the mental fortitude that you need to push past that wall, you know this, you're a runner, you hit that wall. And it's like you can choose to stop or you can choose to go through the worst of it and come out on the other side with not just like a physical, like not just like a physical victory, but like mental victory. And so like I look at that, especially with Apparelist and the way we're building it, as this is a marathon. It's so cliche to say it, and I'm like rolling my eyes at myself because I said that. But it is. It's like I am not going to see the exact results I want. I can either choose to quit and give up and be like, ah, this isn't for me, or I can keep running. I can hit a mile marker. I can hit a distance. I can, grab that benchmark. Eventually, I will get there, but it takes a lot of mental fortitude to get to where you want to
Yeah, you're preaching to the choir. It's cool, the parallels. And before you mentioned the parallelist and analogy or connection, it was in my head too, like starting from scratch, vision, let's break this down. And it's not overnight, but you know it's going to be worth it. And there's going to be detours and turns, but
be.
that's cool.
I had to laugh when you told me that you were also a runner. Because again, like I didn't know that about you, and I love learning like these little facts about you and like people in the industry, and I think that's really cool. So you understand. I mean, you're launching a business. You're in the throes of it right now, so you totally know it. What the heck?
Pain, suffering. Um, a fun story that came to mind that I realized I've never told you. So went to RIT, that's Division 3. So that's for the love of the game. You're not getting any special perks, scholarships. But for being a rat pack like we were pretty good group in the Northeast. We go to nationals every year, cross country, um, different people on the track team. But the coveted internship at RIT, if you were in the print media program, was an opportunity to literally travel the world on a cruise ship by running a printing press for the Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mary, something. And I passed on that because I went to Germany with Heidelberg. But my teammate, Zach Miller, who not so much now, but he's one of the best ultra runners in the United States. So 50, 100 miler. And he was a decent D3 runner, but he wanted to get the internship. So I helped him with the interviews, running how to run the Rico press on the cruise ship. He got it. And long story short, there's not much to do on a cruise ship. And he really, that was his segue into long distance running. You get into port doing 10 to 30 mile runs. And from that small exposure, now he's one of the best runners um, really in the country or world in those distances. So that was cool. Just by no means did I play a role in his success, but to be able to be connected with and I thought that was really neat.
Come on, don't sell yourself short. I really think you did. I mean, we all are cogs, right? You it sounds like we're a pretty important one there for him. So that's cool. You
Got
haven't
the guy on the cruise ship with a lot of boredom. We keep running.
yeah. Hmm.
So back to Apparelist, what do you see as the future or, building now that it's 2024? It's been a few years, certainly growing, helped a lot of businesses.
Mhm.
What does that next evolution look like? Or is it just a lot of keep doing what we're doing and making fine tweaks along the way?
I think for the near term future, what you just said is like making fine tweaks, understanding what it is our audience truly is honing in on. What are their absolute most terrible pain points that we can help them, address or fix or whatever. Because right now it's just it's looking at something and be like, okay, that was a success. How do we build on that? We're looking at something and being like, okay, maybe that didn't hit the way we wanted it to. That's okay. How do we retool it, or do we move on to something else? Because frankly, like not everything we've tried has worked, and that's normal, right? And I'm okay with that because otherwise, how would I know? It's like when I tell my kids you have to try a new food, like you can't say you don't like it out of the gate. Like you have to actually try it. I can't say something's gonna work or not work. I actually have to do it and see if we can get measurable results. Now, right now we're a digital only publication. It's likely, very strong likely going to stay that way. That's the kind of what the world is demanding of us right now. Print's not out of the picture, but digital is our focus. We have a once a week newsletter. We put out some other things. We hold our apparel decoration summit. Obviously, we're a huge part of Pretty United Expo. So I foresee that growing into multiple newsletters a week because people are so hungry for information in this industry. I know we can provide that to them very frequently with newsletters. That's great. Let's do that. Let's provide more resources, white papers, things like that. Again, because people are hungry for education. I really want to start, down the webinar path. We've done a couple webinars, and those seem to hit really well because people can sit and listen to them, and get something good out of it. We have these amazing subject matter experts for the Alliance that our industry, a lot of people I talk to don't necessarily know that these people exist and will help members, and so that's really the future, is just really emphasizing building up that deep well of educational resources that when people do have a pain point, a decorator does hit a snag, they go, you know what, I bet I could go on Apparelist and find an article about this, or a white paper, or a webinar, or get connected to a subject matter expert, or you know what, I could probably reach directly out to Cassie and she might know who I need to talk to. Which if I don't know, I will find the answer because I'm a journalist. This is what I do. I go out and I find the answers.
Yeah.
And I am totally willing to do that. I do field a lot of personal emails. I do field a lot of personal phone calls. People still call, which is great. I love having phone calls. So don't be afraid to pick up the phone and call me. And that's really what the future is. I want to be the go-to resource because we provide experts and connections to experts and expert advice and expert knowledge. Like that, I want to be the elevated voice in the industry that supports, like supports decorators. It's a voice of support for them. They know they can come to us to get their questions answered. Um, I don't necessarily know specifically to how that looks. It could change. I don't know. It's hard to say.
I think that's exciting. And all of what you shared, just thinking about media community, I can't think of a more interesting time than the one that we're in that keeps you on your toes, where in the past you had your printed magazine once a month and that was kind of it. And now think of all the different outlets for different reasons. You listed over 5 of them, and what do you use when for what effect. But it's amazing to have that toolkit and be able to reach people in different ways.
Yeah, and that's kind of really what we've discovered is like across the board, all of our content is being engaged with at a super high level. It doesn't seem to be like video's a good one. People like video. You can like do quick hit. You don't have to necessarily like sit there and scroll and read, but people are actually liking our long form articles that are, 1,200 words or more. People like our shorter posts that are like 800 words. People like the podcast because you can put the podcast on while you're working and just listen to what's happening, So you're right. It's like crazy to see how people are consuming content on so many different levels and platforms.
For your growth and development, what's been one of the biggest skill sets that you've had to learn throughout this journey, from what we've talked about? So now being a content director.
I'm laughing because it's definitely the video journalism part. um, I I personally always thought of myself as maybe a little more behind the scenes person, right? Like I became a journalist because I wanted to get my hands dirty, but my ultimate goal was to be an editor. Like there is nothing I love more. In my previous life, I would lay out the print publication And it was so satisfying to like put a picture here and make it work with this text. And what can we do to manipulate this headline to make it jump off the page? And which needs to go on which page, which article goes on page 6 versus like page 36, right? And like, I loved working behind the scenes and like making something come to life without necessarily needing to be like in front of it, right? And as things have changed, right, I've started to become more involved in like video work. Our Connected Threads newsletter has a video component to it every week. We do a lot of video on social. I do a lot of video interviews. I do a lot of on-site video stuff, like when I'm in shops or at conferences. And that has taught me to face your fear of being in front of a video, because a lot of us have a fear about being recorded or being on live video, like, right? It's a common fear. And that was a huge fear of mine when I first started video. And then I just decided, you know what, if I'm going to be successful, I have to meet our audience where they are. And right now that's video. And so that was something I really had to learn. I had to learn how to not necessarily memorize scripts, but memorize scripts. I had to learn how to dress for video. I had to learn how to adjust my background. I had to learn how to frame. I had to learn, I have basic editing skills, although we have a team that's way better than I am and they do all of our video editing. But I have those basic skills. I had to learn how to produce a video that's different, social versus on site, versus you're going to use this for like a long form piece, or like Printing United Expo did a little commercial, totally different. So, that has been a fun journey, and I'm glad that I was forced to do it.
Oh, kudos. That's a huge leap from the skill set that your foundation. I mean, a day and night difference, and you just have to jump in.
Yeah.
There's
Well, it's like the running analogy. I'm gonna go back to it because I know it's my comfort zone. Sometimes you just have to do something. It's terrifying, and there's going to be some unfortunate learning curves there as well. And some difficulties and challenges. And if you don't do it, I don't know. I don't want to look back and regret not trying something because it scared me.
yeah,
You know?
no, way to go. Well, this has been really fun. I think we shared the same energy for the industry, glass half full. There's so much opportunity to even in 2024 build, create something brand new in an industry that's really, really old. And it'll be fun to follow along everything you and the team are doing at Apparelist, and can't wait for more opportunities to cross in person.
Well, thank you. Yeah, and likewise, I love what you're doing for the industry because I think there's a huge need for what you're doing. And thanks for being a partner with us. I mean, truly, we couldn't be a Apparelist. We couldn't provide the level of expertise we provide without people like you. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thanks again for the time.
Thanks, Nick.